People ask, can the Bible prove that there were different races that didn't come from Adam that were present at Adam's time? The question asked is not factual. First off, there was only one race. If everyone came from Adam, so there was no other at Adam's time. Even though this race was divided at the time of the Tower of Babel, when God separated this race, when he divided them into different nations and confused their languages, the fact that they were all descendants of Noah and Noah was a descendant of Adam, they all came from the same person. Therefore, they themselves still are not different races, but one. So to ask the question, did all the people of different nations and tongues all come from Adam, and was some of them independent from Adam's descendants, is not only an unfactual question, but also the mentality in itself is totally unbiblical and outside of the mind of God. Acts chapter 17 verse 26, and hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed, and hath in the bounds of their habitation. So according to this verse here, he created man all from one blood, from one man. Let's take it all the way back to Adam's generation. And where did Cain get his wife? Genesis chapter 5 verse 1 through 32. This is the book of the generation of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him, male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day that they were created. Verse 1 says that this is the book of the generation of Adam in the day that God created man. Notice it says in the day that God created man. Verse 2 says God called them Adam. And verse 1 again says that these was the generation of Adam. So we see here all that was in the day of man, no other. Verse 3, and Adam lived 130 years and begot sons in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth. One of the biggest doubts that causes people to believe that there were other races on earth at the time of Adam that was not of his descendants is a lack of understanding of how one man multiplied the earth with just his children, because they say that there had to be others in order for Adam's sons to take wives to help populate the earth. Not fully understanding the fullness of the word, we have to remember God told Adam to be fruitful and multiply, no one else. Verse 4, and the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Let me read that again because I want you to catch this. And the days of Adam. See, in order to understand that everyone came from one man, we have to understand, where did Cain get his wife? Where did these men get their wives from? I want you to read this again. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. I couldn't help but to notice that in verse 4 that it says that the days of Adam after he begot Seth were 800 years and he begot sons and daughters. Notice it's not saying that after he begot Seth that Seth begot sons and daughters, but after Adam begot Seth in his day, he being Adam, he begot sons and daughters. And to further confirm that verse 4 is not talking about Seth, just read verse 6. It tells us that in the days of Seth, he begot Enos. Okay, why is this important? Because Adam had daughters. Okay, Adam had daughters that he produced, not just his sons. He begot more sons and daughters than what the scripture talked about. Now I'm going somewhere with this. This is how Cain and Seth got their wives. It was not incest then because the bloodline was too pure at that time. Not only did the generation of Adam live up to 1,000 years, but had children all the way up to the age of 700 years old. That means when these men were 700 years of age, they were still producing children. With that being said, that this was way more than plenty of time to populate the earth, and we can see that here in this next chapter and verse. Then we'll come back to it. And Genesis chapter 4 verse 17, and Cain knew his wife. Okay, the word, if you understand the context of the Hebraic scriptures, this means he He didn't say he met his wife, he knew his wife. Many great scholars will tell us and confirm that this is talking about sexual intercourse, because the next verse says, and she conceived and bore Enos. So when you look at verse 17, and Cain knew his wife, there's a semicolon. Normally when there's a semicolon, that means there is a related direct connection with the next verse that's connected to the first verse. When it says, and she conceived and bore Enos. And she built a city and called the name of the city after the name of Enos. Notice that through the birth of Enos, Cain's son, that Cain built a city and named it after his son Enos. We see here that these brothers lived long enough to not only populate the earth, but if Cain built a city, and then the other two built a city, and then their children's children build cities, this could all be possible, seeing that their children would live long enough to know their great-great-grandparents. So not only by Adam, but his entire generation, it took to get the human race started, to get the human race going. But no, let's not stop there. Not just one man started the whole thing. Not only Adam, but after the flood of Noah, we have one man again. He was told to repopulate the earth. Once again, we see one man populating the earth. And it was also his generation of people that did so as well. Well enough to not only do the same, but in that same generation of time, not only were there cities, but that their cities were so great that they built a tower to heaven, that it caused God to come down, and so great that God divided them up into nations as he then confused their languages and changed their skin color. So it was then that something changed in the DNA of man. I want you to think about this and chew on this for a little bit. Now, if we keep reading down the generation of Noah, how this earth was repopulated, we'll see a similar structure of Adam's generation of time. It gives us more detail if we keep going all the way down to verse 32. These are also where the 24 elders originally came from, of all kindreds and tongues and nations. Check out my video on who are the 24 elders. Like and subscribe.